In this video, we're going to take a look again at GBTC. I know that this is a hot topic these days. People are wondering what's going on with it. People are pointing to it being at discount right now and asking if something is wrong with the market. A lot of people are having wrongful assumptions about what GBTC does. And if you go into my recent videos, you'll find that I actually have another video on GBTC and its price action, but I'll take a minute to review kind of the way that GBT's price action works based on the previous cycle. Now, it's helpful to remember that we only have one full cycle that GBTC existed in, okay? And what I shared before is that after the halving, once you start from the low following the halving, you basically have three stages. You have three rises followed by very, very, very long periods of time where there was no rise. So let's start with this first one. In the last cycle, starting from the low following the halving, we had a move that went up about 100%. After that 100% move, GBTC consolidated sideways, right? Lost a lot of its value, but it went sideways for about 117 days before making a new all-time high. Once it made a new all-time high, the move, as you can see as my screen adjusts, was 272% to the next high, right? We came down, went up, touched that high again, came down, consolidated over. This was for a period of 77 days. Okay, remember, GBTC doesn't trade 24/7 like the rest of the crypto markets do, okay? So just keep that in mind. But once this new all-time high was made, within 21 days, it had a 91% move before it got to an all-time high. And then it consolidated again along for a very long period of time, 85 days. And then once it got to a new all-time high, before the peak of the Bitcoin bull market, it had a 229% move up. So if you if you pull back and you look, right, if we log scale this so it's a little bit easier to see, we have, after starting from the first low after the halving, we have 1, 2, 3 long periods of consolidation sideways or to the downside before a new all-time high is made, and then we have massive moves upwards, okay? So it's so important if you are invested in GBTC to keep this in mind, okay? GBTC will inevitably, in the end, track the price of Bitcoin. That's what it's designed to do in terms of a percentage basis, but you have to be prepared for those prolonged consolidation periods. So if we go from the low, which was back here, we've already had this move up here, right? And then we had a consolidation. So that high, that peak was about August 14th, okay? And then the next time we made a new all-time high was in late October, okay? And then we've had this rise, right? And this is where, it gets a little confusing, because where do you count the high? Do you count it here, or where do you start counting your sideways consolidation from? Is it here at the peak on January 7th or January 8th, or is it this peak on February 19th? Right? That makes a difference, right? Because obviously, if we're starting from this peak on the 19th of February, then we're going to have a lot longer to go sideways. Okay. But this was like, we had this rise from, if we go from high to high, right, from one peak to the next peak, it was 228%, almost 229%. It's a big move. All right. So that's, from once it started making a new all-time high to the high. Okay. And it was a relatively short period of time. So look, we're only in our second period of consolidation, okay? So I said this in my previous video on GBTC. I expect, regardless of where we are starting from, I'm expecting that we're going to be in a sideways consolidation for some time, okay? I'm thinking that this consolidation could go all the way through the end of April, and it might even go into May. And let's also not forget that if we're starting our sideways consolidation from this peak, if I turn off my auto for a second, then to go, if we were to go, say, 100 days, or maybe 110 days, because that's about the average, that puts us at the beginning of June. Okay, and if you think that that's not possible, I mean, like if you go back to the previous cycle, turn my auto back on and my log scale off. If you go back to this previous cycle, look at the price action. I mean, look at how low, like you come down a considerable amount from the high, right? When you get to this low, that was minus 32% from that low. Okay, and then look at this from this peak to this low. It's 55%. So it's going to happen. You're going to see these long consolidations with these drawdowns. Look at another 55% drawdown on GBTC, right? So it's you have to have like that big perspective and the price history, right? We have to go off of price history. Now anything could change because we only have one cycle. And you never know, like it all depends on what happens with the underlying. You can see here on this chart that today Bitcoin is up at, it's at minus 1453 on the day. All right, look at, if you step back, we have a little bit of a difference between GBTC and the underlying. See, we just didn't make a higher high right here. I don't think that that's ultimately that much to worry about. One thing to keep into perspective here, and you see my Bitcoin chart's all messy, is that in a normal Bitcoin cycle, it's common to have 30 to 40% pullbacks. In the last cycle, just the second halving cycle of Bitcoin, we had, I think, 6 of them. Okay, we've only had one pullback of at least 30% since the halving. That means that theoretically, we could have 5 more if we're following the previous cycle. And off the top of my head, I can't remember from the first halving cycle how many there were, because it was a little bit different because it was a double wave with a double spike, right? But suffice to say, if you think about this, Bitcoin could come down 30%. Its move that it's had recently is only down about 20%, right? Where a 30% move would take you down to around the top of this green box that I have on my Bitcoin chart. And then a 40% pullback would put you at just under 40,000. And any of those moves are entirely possible. And if that happens, you'll see GBTC pull back a lot, all right? But you have to keep long-term perspective. Now, I want to address what a lot of people are talking about with GBTC. A lot of people think that GBTC is, that it's its premium is gone and that it's at discount because of the presence of other sort of funds. I think there's a couple ETFs in Canada, right? I've got a couple of them down here. And so first thing I'm going to go is to the Osprey Bitcoin Trust. Now on TradingView, it hasn't been available for some time, right? On different brokerages, it hasn't been available for some time. But look at this price action. After its initial, spike, it was up 100%, over a period of 3 days, right? But ever since then, look at how far it's dropped. It's dropped over 66%. Okay, so in terms of price action, right? Look at it. It's dropped even worse than GBTC has. Okay, now then if you go, where is my Osprey BTC Trust? I think it's over here. Okay, it has a net asset value of just under the market price as of yesterday, but today its price is still above its NAV. Okay, and it's minuscule. It's a tiny premium. Okay. And its Bitcoin per share is a lot different than GBTC's, right? So you have to keep that in mind. Okay, now let's go back to the chart. Let's look at EBIT. Okay, this is another Bitcoin ETF. It's not available everywhere, but from its inception, it went up only about 14%, according to this chart. But then since then, over the last few days, it had a 15% drop, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's too far off of Bitcoin either. It's a little bit better in terms of the chart than the Osprey BTC Trust, right? But let's find this ETF. Right, I think we're on EBIT, right? So look at the EBIT, right? The NAV, the net asset value, is $27.03, but its market price is less. Okay. So this is also trading at a discount. Okay. And then if you look at one of the more recent ones that have just appeared, this is the US dollar version of BTCC.U. Okay. This is another ETF, I believe, in Canada. Right? Its price action looks a lot like EBIT, right? So I don't really need to do the percentages here. By the way, you notice this ascending trend line, which has provided support for BT, CCU, EBIT, and also GBTC. Okay, no surprise there. All right, let's look at that one. If you look over here, for this particular one, you see here on my screen, ETF USD BTCC.U. Its NAV is 1075. We'll look at where it's trading. It's trading at 1054 today. So it's also at a discount. So this whole narrative about GBTC is, it's not as good. I mean, I know there's a management fee which can play a role as well, but it's not trading any worse, relatively speaking. I mean, it is also at a premium. The premium is a little high right now, but I mean, like, if the narrative that's out there that the other Bitcoin ETFs and funds are trading at a premium, that's false. Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to just mention is look at the price history that we have on GBTC. It's proven, and it holds the assets. In fact, it holds more assets than Grayscale holds more assets than all of the other funds. Okay, and so that's something you have to consider. And each share of GBTC is tied to more of the underlying than the other funds. Okay, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. All right, so now what does this mean going forward? Well, look, I'll log scale this, and then I'll try to pull it back a little bit to see if I can show you. All right, I have a couple of price targets. I've showed this in previous videos. I think after this prolonged consolidation, our next move up is going to take us close to 100, where we'll consolidate sideways for a while, and then we'll have our next move up, which I think is going to take GBTC. I'm targeting somewhere around 312, 314. I think it could be as low as 150, or it could shoot up as high as almost $700. But I think the sweet spot is somewhere in the low 300s. I think that's where GBTC will end up being at the end of Bitcoin's cycle sometime in September. So you have to recognize and be prepared for the fact that GBTC, when Bitcoin is consolidating, is going to underperform, and sometimes underperform significantly. Okay, but then as soon as Bitcoin has its moves upwards, then you're going to see, after a while, GBTC outperforming. All right. So don't have the wrong idea. Understand what you're investing in. This is not financial advice, obviously, but if this is something you're invested in, you need to do your best to understand what it is that you're putting your money towards. You need to have patience. You need to have the right time horizon. You need to have the right perspective. Okay, don't make decisions out of fear. Don't FOMO. And don't make decisions out of greed either. Be strategic in what you're doing and understand what it is that you're investing in. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe and share. I'll see you guys next time.